Should you get the Tissot PRX or the Christopher Ward 12? It's a slightly older topic that's worth revisiting in 2025, with some new developments such as new models from these two brands and more strap options. Today we are putting these three sports watches up for comparison against each other. The PRX Powermatic 80, the 12 from Christopher Ward, and to see what money gets you, the Czapek Antarctique. This review will focus more on how the watches compare against each other. We have all three models right here in front of me, so we're going to be looking at how the watches wear, the case, dial, movement, bracelet, and of course, because this is the deluxe video, strap options. It's also a first look at our new CTS strap for the 12. The comparison will center on the PRX and the 12 because realistically, that's what most people are likely debating between. The first area I wanted to look at is the case design and wearability of the watches. These are the most important aspect of a watch to me. Immediately, I can tell that the 12 wears smaller than the PRX, even though on paper, they are both 40mm. I chalk it up to the difference in thickness, the less chunky design of the 12, and the sharper taper of the bracelet. On paper, the 12 is just 0.5mm thinner than a PRX, but on the wrist it feels much slimmer and has a more cohesive wearing experience. I prefer the case aesthetic of the 12 as the taper on the mid case is stronger and you don't have as much empty space on the mid case. On the PRX, it feels like the circular dial sits on a separate chunk of metal, whereas the integration of the dial and the mid case of the 12 feels more cohesive. There's a bit more detail on the 12 compared to the PRX, such as the 12-sided bezel that features a mix of polished and brush finishing and fine beveling, compared to the PRX, which just has a sloping polished bezel. The 12 features a screw-in crown with a pair of crown guards, while the Tissot has a simple pull-out crown. I do prefer the clean aesthetic of the PRX without the crown guards, but I feel like the integration of the crown guard gives the 12 more flexibility when they do wish to introduce other complications such as a chronograph and still keep the case design cohesive across the entire line. Now let's take a look at the Antarctic and what you're getting at the higher end of the spectrum. You can immediately tell that there is a difference in the level of finishing just looking at the case alone. The top surface of the mid case is very slightly rounded and has a uniform radial brushing, which provides some visual interest when the watch plays with the light. The crystal on the Antarctic is also very slightly domed compared to a totally flat crystal on the 12 and PRX. Now, personally, I always prefer a dome crystal because of the additional depth it provides when you're looking at the dial. All three watches feature anti-reflective coating, but on the PRX and 12, it is lightly just coated on one side, while on the Antarctic, it's coated on both sides. This makes the dial of the Antarctic much more legible compared to the other two, and you feel like you can almost reach out and touch the hands and initials. Now, speaking of the dial, the difference in pattern is the most obvious between the three. I find that the 3D pyramidal pattern on the 12 to be a little bit too busy, and I much prefer the relatively plain waffle dial pattern of the PRX. With a slight sunburst effect. Of course, this is very much a matter of personal preference. Some may say that the PRX is too derivative and looks like the tapestry pattern of the Royal Oak, while the 12 pattern is a variation of the Christopher Ward logo. However, if you compare the date windows, to me, the 12 looks much better as the date window is the same color as the dial. It's color matching. I also prefer having the date at 6 o'clock instead of 3 o'clock for a more symmetrical dial. Comparing the hands and the hour markers, once again, I feel like none of them are objectively better than the other. The PRX has slimmer markers in hands, while the 12 has triangular markers with a generous amount of lume. Both dials are very legible during the day. However, at night, the lume plots of the PRX are barely noticeable, while the larger lume plots on the 12 feel like they would actually work. Bringing in the Antarctic, the most obvious improvement is that there are many different polished facets on the dial, then that helps the watch to sparkle under the light. I'm not sure how exactly Czapek does it, but the dial pattern is quite insane. Now, Czapek calls it the Stairway to Eternity pattern. It's a trapezoid motif which has a three-dimensional stem surface that creates a play of shadow across the dial. On each of the hour markers, that's where the magic happens. There's a total of 4 different facets surrounding the lume plot, all mirror polished at different angles. The hour, minute, and seconds hand are also all polished to a very high degree. And like the 12, the date window blends in perfectly with the rest of the dial. I guess that's part of what you're paying for. Turning the watch over, and you see the movement powering these watches. Let's first put the Antarctic aside, because once you've seen that movement, the 12 and PRX immediately become less interesting. The PRX comes fitted with Tissot's entry-level movement, the Powermatic 80.111. I'm not much of a movement buff, but the headline 80 hours of power reserve does make it attractive from a day-to-day use perspective. The 12 comes with a Sellita SW200 movement. It has a 38-hour power reserve and is widely regarded as a reliable workhorse movement. Aesthetically, the movement and rotor on both the PRX and 12 aren't decorated or finished to a high degree. So while it's nice to have a display case back to see the beating heart, there's actually not much else to see. On the other hand, if we look at the Antarctic movement, we can clearly see why this costs so much more than the other two watches. The caliber was conceived entirely in-house by Czapek. An off-center platinum micro-rotor gives you the benefit of a self-winding movement, but still allows you to admire the movement, architecture, and finishing. It has 56 hours of power reserve, which is enough to last the entire weekend without wearing this watch. There's a total of 7 skeletonized bridges, allowing a clear view of the gear train. In terms of the finishing, there's a lot to appreciate. If we just focus on the middle bridge supporting the third wheel, you'll see a black polished surface, and by my count, 6 inner angles just on this one component. In my opinion, the movement is really where the Antarctic shines, even more so than the dial. If you're in the market for an integrated bracelet sports watch with hot horology movement and finishing, the list of potential candidates shrink quite a bit, and the Antarctic is near the top of that list. Of course, one of the most important aspects of any integrated bracelet sports watch is the bracelet itself. The PRX and the 12 both feature single link bracelet. That means there's only one type of link that forms the bracelet. Both bracelets are very similar. Each of the links are of the same size. Both bracelets come with half links, and they have the same amount of flex and articulation. The key difference is that the bracelet on the 12 tapers down to 16 mm, while the bracelet on the PRX tapers down to 18 mm. You may think it's just 2 mm, but I've always preferred a sharper taper, and so the design of the 12 bracelet appeals to me more than the PRX. The clasp on both watches is also pretty much identical, and they don't have any form of on-the-fly micro adjustment. The Czapek, on the other hand, has a 2-link bracelet. The outer link, or the bigger link, is brushed, and they are connected by a polished mid-link shaped like a C. The outer links are quite large, but because of the 2-link design, it allows the bracelet of the Antarctic to articulate even more than the 12 or the PRX. The mix of brush and polish finishing also gives a good contrast. More importantly, the clasp on the latest generation of Antarctic features an on-the-fly micro adjustment, so you can extend the bracelet just a little if you need to. However, one area where the Antarctic disappoints is that the bracelet actually has quite a lot of sharp edges, so it can be a little bit uncomfortable when you're wearing it. Now, in terms of bracelet sizing and link removal, the PRX uses a pin and collar system, while the 12 and Antarctic uses screw-in bars. Screw-in bars for me are much more user-friendly, as you just need to use a screwdriver, which most people have, while pin and collar requires a special tool to remove and insert the pins. So the 12 and Antarctic has a slight advantage over the PRX here. And finally, we come to the method of bracelet and strap attachment. You can tell this is my favorite topic. And here's where we see all 3 models having totally different methods of attaching. I just want to point out one similarity across all 3 models, which makes them a winner in my books. You can actually remove the bracelet without needing any special sharp metal tools against the watch. This is so refreshing to see, especially when compared to sports watches from the big brands like Rolex or Tudor, where removing the bracelet can be a very stressful endeavor. First, on the PRX, the bracelet features double knob quick release spring bars. In theory, you could remove the bracelet without any tools, but in practice, the knobs are a little short, and they're covered by the case back, so you might need some help to compress the spring bars and remove the bracelet. Now, second, on the 12, it actually features double knob quick release spring bars as well, but instead of the spring bars being on the bracelet, it is actually present on the case. This is the first time I'm seeing a design like this. And then with Remove the Antarctic, there's a fixed bar that runs across the lugs, and the bracelet has this C-shaped cutout that hooks into the bar, and a knob that you can turn to keep the bar within the cutout of the bracelet. Unfortunately, my experience has been that there is too much tolerance between the bar and the cutout, resulting in quite a bit of lateral movement and longitudinal play between where the bracelet attaches to the case. To most people, whether the spring bar is on the case or bracelet might not make much of a difference, especially if the watch remains on the bracelet. Personally, as a strap maker, I prefer the strap attachment on the 12, as it means you don't have to develop special spring bars or metal links for the straps, and just have to focus on making sure that the shape of the strap fits the case. And lastly, because this is a deluxe video after all, let's compare the strap options available for the three models. The PRX has rubber and leather strap available, both from Tissot and from strap brands such as Deluxe. We have a wide range of options available in both rubber and leather, and you can visualize how these straps will look on your PRX with our strap finder, so you can be sure to find something that fits your style. Christopher Ward does offer a rubber strap for the 12, but third-party options are very limited, and as far as I know, no one makes leather straps for the 12. We have been working on our CTS rubber straps to fit the 12 for quite a while, and depending on when you watch this video, we might already be selling these straps with the sailcloth texture. It is a similar case for the Antarctic. It comes with rubber strap and deploying clasp included. However, there are very few alternative rubber or leather straps that you can get for this watch. I don't even know if there's any out there. It's even more unlikely for any brand to develop straps for the Antarctic independently, given the special attachment system and the metal link needed to attach it onto the watch. While we've only compared one model from each of these three watches, in actual fact, there's quite a few dial variants to look at for the PRX, the 12, and the Antarctic, and there's actually quite a few case sizes and materials too. We filmed this in August 2025. There's quite a few different versions of the PRX Powermatic 80 with a range of dial colors and even different case materials like rose gold, yellow gold, and carbon. And they come in 40mm, 35mm, and even a 25mm version available in quartz. My personal favorite PRX would actually be the full yellow gold version. When you pair it with a rubber strap and a matching clasp, it actually looks much more expensive than it really is. The 12 comes in three sizes today, 40mm, 36mm, and the recently introduced 38mm, and it's available in steel and titanium. There's been quite a few dial colors introduced since the 12 was launched, and you might even find a few limited edition custom-made watches, such as this version they did with the Horological Society of Utah. Of all the 12 models, I really like the titanium version the best, the one we have here, because it's a little slimmer than the steel and it's so light. The lack of weight really makes this wear so well. The Antarctic has two sizes in 40.5mm and 38.5mm with steel and precious metal versions, and with many dial variants available as well. What we have here is the standard black dial version, but my favorite variant of the Antarctic has to be the Flying Diamond. It has an adventuring stone dial, which already makes it super cool, but also diamond indices, which makes the entire watch just sparkle in the light. I've seen it once in person and it's really mesmerizing. If you've just clicked into this segment of the video hoping to get a summary of everything we just talked about, you're in luck. Let's just compare the PRX and the 12 at this point and leave out the Antarctic. Between these two watches, I would say that the overall design of the watch would be my primary consideration, given that many of the other aspects of the watch are so similar. And because design preferences are subjective, there's no right or wrong answer here. Whether you prefer the plain styling of the PRX or the more intricate and detailed 12, that's up to you to decide. It is true that the 12 is double the price of the PRX, but I feel like it is warranted given the overall better attention to detail and finishing the dial and case. Another factor to consider is also the choice of case material and color. If you want a yellow gold, rose gold, or even carbon watch, you have to get the PRX. There's no options available for the 12. But if you want a titanium integrated sports watch, then the 12 becomes the only option. The PRX is definitely a much more ubiquitous watch. Tissot has a ton of retailers and point of sales in pretty much every city. It's increasingly common to see the PRX out in the wild. I would walk on the street and look at someone's wrist, and more often than not, it's a PRX. Whereas you're probably only going to see another 12 at places where watch enthusiasts hang out, such as at the Deluxe Boutique. Personally, I prefer the overall design and feel of the 12, especially on the bracelet. But the PRX has a wider variety of strap options, and that keeps me going back to the PRX. What's truly remarkable, in my opinion, is that both the PRX and the 12 have brought integrated bracelet sports watches to the masses with a much more accessible price point. And you can't do much worse by getting either of these watches.